So in the first part of the session, we're going to go through some of the product updates that have come into Test Modeler in the last quarter. What we also thought would be good is to give a bit of a recap into some of the features that we have been working on and just show kind of the current state of the product for a couple of the use cases that we've been working with customers on as well. So the first one, which is pretty big for us, is mobile test automation. So I think what we're seeing in the market and a lot of the companies we're working with is mobile testing is becoming more and more important. You know, if you look at a lot of the devices and the platforms that consumers are connecting into, the different websites, different software that organizations are offering, a large percentage of that is coming from mobile devices. So we've added in the ability into Test Modeler to be able to come out and basically automate using mobile devices against native mobile apps and also web-based applications. Okay, so you can literally come in to the model, you can start dragging and dropping actions on top, and you can connect into either local mobile devices, or you can come out and you can connect into some kind of cloud-based offering like Source Labs, Browser Stack, and the various other mobile platforms that exist. So just to give a bit of a taster for that. So when you come into Test Modeler now and you create a new project, there is a screen which gives an option over what kind of automation you would like to undertake. And these automation capabilities are built into Test Modeler. So you can come in, you can say, I want to do web automation, I want to do mobile automation, API, Dynamics 365, mainframe. It may be that you want to do test data automation to automate your test data. Or, some of you on the call may have your own automation frameworks, which are already configured in Test Modeler. These are down the bottom under the custom menu. Okay. But if we come out and we select this project is going to be mobile based, what we get is a series of example models which show us how to connect into local devices and also cloud-based providers. And then we've also got some examples here for connecting into and automating against native and web-based applications. So one of the models I want to focus on is the one we've built here, which is for an example app. And this is for an e-commerce application. So we load a device, we go through the menu structure in the application, we can go through a catalog, we can log in, and at the end, we end up going for a shopping basket and we end up checking out. Okay. Now, if we look at the load device here, what you'll see is that we have specific mobile automation actions that have been overlaid. So the first thing we're doing is we're saying, I want to connect to an Android device. I want to load a particular application. In this case, we're going to be connecting to Source Labs and we're going to take a screenshot. Now, these actions are pre-built into Test Modeler. So when you create that new project, all of the mobile actions are pre-configured in here, and we have lots and lots of actions for typical mobile automation tasks like opening a browser, opening an application, swiping, connecting in, entering text, clicking on particular points, etc. Now, what that means is once we've created the model, we can go off and we can execute this automation. Now, in this case, this automation will be executed using Appium, and it's going to connect over to a Source Labs environment that we have up and running. And what we'll get is once we've executed those tests, those run results are fed back into the model, and we can view those results overlaid back on top. So here you'll see we're going through this particular application. We're going through the e-commerce page, we're ordering a shopping bag, and then at the end, we're going through the checkout process. So it's incredibly quick, it's incredibly easy to get started, and you can spin up mobile automation. Typically kind of within about 10 to 15 minutes, you can be up and running, creating automated tests against the mobile. And all of that is pre-configured, built into Test Modeler. You just need to go to projects and releases, create a new project, and then you can either use the examples that come pre-built, or you can start to use the automation actions to link these together to build your own automated tests against your applications. So that's a new piece of functionality in Test Modeler, which is all about automating mobile devices. The other feature that we've added in is it's fairly typical for organizations to want to store their automation within their own source control management system. And before, you would have to go into Git, pull down the repository for the automation framework that's being used, and then bring this into Test Modeler and configure it. So there was quite a few steps involved, although it was possible. What we've done is we've added in an easy to use wizard, which allows people to come in and set up their automation with Git and have it all running out the box. So if I go back into Test Modeler, I go to Workspace, Configuration, go to Code Templates. What we can do is we can click on New Framework, and we can select how we want to create this new framework. So we can either customize it, which was kind of what we had before, or you can come in now and you can say, I want to clone an existing framework from Git. If I do this, and we're going to specify a new connector here, I'm going to put my API key in. We can specify what type of automation framework we want to pull down. So here we'll say we're going to do mainframe automation. Pull this for our webinar. Save. And what this is going to do is go away and it will fork our automation repository. It will set up all the code templates in Test Modeler, pull them down, and then we have a project which is up and running that we can use to create artifacts and push them into Git automatically. Okay, so this is a way for us to be able to come out, pre-configure Test Modeler with Git, pull down a framework and have that framework set up within your source control repository and ready to go. So it should help you get started much faster and hopefully help people start automating much quicker with a lot less configuration. So for this one, I'm going to hand over to Lena, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you, James. Hi, everyone. So for the new automation actions, we've expanded our range of out-of-the-box automation actions to help your teams automate models faster. And these automation actions will save your team's time by removing the need to write custom code for a wide range of functions, ranging from web, API, test data testing, and more. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. And here we can see that the automation actions will be available in each new project you create inside of Test Modeler. So inside of the components folder, there's a folder called Actions. And these will contain several categories of automation functions based on the type of project you select. So for this example, we chose a web automation example, but depending on which one you choose, you could see things such as the mobile testing that James showed off earlier. We even have mainframe testing options as well. So here we can see we have API general actions, email actions. And for this example, we'll take a look into the web general actions. And here we can see that full list of automation actions we have available. So we can do a lot of things such as checking if this checkbox should be selected, clicking by text, adding cookies, a lot of common automation actions. And if we take a look into one of these, we can see that it takes a parameter name and what type of parameter it's going to be expecting inside of the model. And if we click on edit, we can also see the code that's lying underneath. So if we go back inside of the model, the way that we would use this is by clicking and importing it just like any other automation action. So here we could see that folder where we were looking at our web general actions. If we use this one as an example, we can see now that if we wanted to import click by text, it's going to ask us for the parameter that we'd like to input in. And this could be a test data variable or a static variable. So we'll go ahead and put example. And when we click save, it's automatically inputted in. So we think that these libraries will greatly increase the speed of automation and efficiency within your teams. So I'll go ahead and pass it back to you, James. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for that, Lena. Great, good. So let me take the screen back. That's coming through. So what we wanted to do next is obviously in Test Modeler, our web automation capabilities have kind of been around since we first launched the product. But over time, over the past kind of 4 or 5 years, we've obviously been spending a lot of time really refining this process, moving a lot of the configuration, the integration directly into Test Modeler. And recently, we've been really working on the ease of use, trying to minimize the amount of steps that you have to go through to actually build and execute any test automation in Test Modeler. So what we wanted to do here was really to recap on our functionality and show, where we are now with the product and the latest kind of end-to-end process that can be used to generate web automation, execute it, and then also trigger that on a schedule as well. So I'm just going to come out of the slide here and let's go back into Test Modeler. So what I've done here is I've just come in and I've created a brand new project for web automation. Okay. And the first thing you'll see is, as Lena was just showing there, we've got this action pack of all the pre-configured actions. So here we've got the web automation actions where we've got, all of those ones that Lena was just showing before. Now we can use these to build up our automation, which is fine. But we've also got the scanner in Test Modeler, which is where we can come in and we can scan an application and we can build out those components that we want to use. Okay. Now, once we finish scanning, we can select where we want them to go. We can hit the save button and this will upload them into Test Modeler. Now, as part of that upload process, we will now automatically open the folder where the artifacts have been created. So here we've obviously got our automation identifiers, which have got all the identifiers for extracting those components. We've got the automation code that's been produced to execute automation and interact with that web page that we're automating. And then we've also got here the model that's been produced, which can go off and, which is being used to automate against this particular form that we just scanned. So this model has been auto-produced as part of that scan process. And what we've tried to do here is to build this model in as good a way as possible to represent that system that we're testing. Now, obviously, when it comes to, more generic pages or other elements that have been scanned, it may be that you need to come in and start to edit this model to piece it together to represent the logic of the system. But we will always try and do our best job to create that model to represent the application we're testing. So here, obviously, we've got two kind of endpoints. We successfully end up registered or we end up in some kind of error, and everything in between, and the different data combinations that we can go through and the different automation actions that we want to trigger to go and undertake those automation on the actual web page we're testing. So once we've got that model, we can come in and we can hit generate, which is going to generate our paths. So here we've got 8. We've got our 7 negative, and we've got our 1 positive, which is our happy path. And we can come off and we can execute this automation. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select to also publish this automation inside a test suite, which we have called regression. So what this is going to do is it's going to go off and execute our automation. So it's going to spin up and run this directly in Test Modeler. So it's here, it's going to spin up, our web browser in the background. It's then going to automate the tests. And what we should see in a minute is that we start to get some run results come back, which are obviously overlaid on top of the model. And we can come in and we can view those run results directly in Test Modeler and different screenshots and logging messages as we've gone through the different steps. Now, as we generated those tests, we came in and we added them into a test suite, which was called regression. And if we look in this test suite, what you'll see is that we've got one test from a model, which represents 8 test cases underneath it. Okay. Now this can have many different tests from different models embedded in here. You can just publish different ones. You can come in and you can run this test suite on demand just by hitting the run button, which will obviously go off and trigger the test suite. You can also embed this test suite inside a CI/CD pipeline. So if you've got something like Jenkins or Azure DevOps, Circle CI or a similar CI/CD tool, you can come in and you can embed Test Modeler inside that DevOps process to go and execute the appropriate test automation as that CI/CD pipeline is being executed and run. Now, the other piece is that you can trigger this to be run on a schedule. So I can select my test plan and I can select for it to be ran on a weekly schedule, every day at a certain point in time on an hourly schedule if we need to, or we can go very, very granular here and we could specify to be ran every X minutes. Okay. Now, this may not be so relevant for UI testing, but if we're thinking about something like API monitoring, where we want to monitor that API every minute or every couple of minutes to make sure it's still functional, this is where you can go down. You can be really granular over, when you want your test to be executed on a much more granular schedule. But the premise here is that, using Test Modeler, we can go from a web page or any web-based app. We can scan it. We can create a model incredibly quickly. We can run the tests inside Test Modeler, so you don't have to configure an external automation framework, although you can if you want to. And then obviously we can publish those test cases into a test plan where they can be executed either in a CI/CD pipeline, or they can be set up to be ran on a schedule, on a routinely schedule whenever they are required. So that's covering, the latest and greatest where we are with our end-to-end web automation. What we also have in Test Modeler is lots and lots of new features that come in over the past kind of 3 to 6 months. And if you want to keep up to date with those, just click on the release notes part in the product here. And what you'll see is all of the latest stuff that's come through. We keep this up to date whenever a new release is made. And all the list links back to the knowledge base. And what you'll see also is that all of these articles that have been produced have got videos associated with them and some documentation as well. So this is the best way to be kept up to date, kind of in real time as new things are coming into the product. And you'll see here, in October, we had about 12 new features that have come in. So I'm now going to hand over to George, who's going to talk a little bit about test data automation and some of the latest features that come through there. George, you're on mute.
Thanks a lot, James. So I'm going to be running through a new sort of complex automatic dataset builder that we've added in test data automation. So essentially what it does is it allows you to model complex data combinations and create a very, very rich set of valid data based off of a series of data rules that we've considered. Very, very useful if, either you have your data rules already defined and some combinations of data already, or even if you just have your data and you need to apply some rules to it. So let me do one quick slide just to kind of roughly explain the approach. So on the right-hand side here, we have your system under test and then the data associated with that. Now, that could be in a number of different formats. Could be inside through an API, could be in a database, could be in a flat file. It doesn't really matter. What we can do is we can bring that data in and create a list inside of test data automation. Now, to that list, we can apply a series of data rules. Now, they could be positive rules or they could be negative rules, depending on the type of testing and the type of data that you require. Now, once we've defined all of those data rules, we can come in and create dynamic data models from both of those assets that are mapping out different combinations of data that we've created. Then we can go away, hit generate, generate a few hundred rows and kick those out into wherever they need to go. So typically that might be into some kind of automation framework, could be into a CSV or elsewhere for manual testing. So the first step here is we have our so we're inside test data automation here, and where we want to go first is our potato supply matrix. So essentially this example is on suppliers of potatoes and buyers and types and things like that. So you'll see here we've got a few initial rows. You've got a few buyers, typical UK sort of supermarkets, got lots of different suppliers, sizes and different types of potatoes as well. Now this this list has been created from an external source. So we designed this using a CSV, but really this data can come from anywhere. It doesn't particularly matter. It could be, as I mentioned, through an API or from a more sort of concrete database as well. Now, what we've done is we've created a series of rules that we want to apply to that data set. So if you take a look here, essentially what we're doing is we're saying, okay, on this first row, my buyer has to be Tesco, and the supplier has to be Jersey Early. And basically what we're saying here is that these two data points are invalid. You know, they don't go together. And we're just using a basic sort of syntax here just to delineate that, okay, when we create our data, we don't want any Tesco and Jersey Early combinations. Similar thing for the rest of these. You've got not M&S Gower, but you've also got things like so musts as well. So that's basically saying that these two particular data points must exist together. If they don't exist together, then we're just creating lots of invalid data. Now, in this example, we've done this broadly by hand. However, if in your organization you have some of these data rules that are predefined, and if they're in some kind of let's say common format, we can build a parser to come in and basically import those rules and get you started here. On the other hand, if you don't have data rules assigned already, then you can just come in and do this within the list screen and start to build up a bit of a library of all of the different data rules and what should and what shouldn't exist together. Now, from those two assets, we've created a little sort of a job here that's going to allow you to create a model for your complex data set based off of the rules and based off the initial data that you've got. So if I open this one up, I've just come in and pre-populated this, but essentially we're just creating a new model. And then we're just picking up all of the different columns from our list that we care about. So you've got names of buyer, type of supplier, size of supplier, type of product. Now, additionally, we've also referenced our meta rules as well. So inside of one of those lists, we've got obviously all of those must and must not combinations. And we're basically saying here, we want to point those rules at this set of columns from our list. Now, what we can also do is we can also query against that list as well. So in that list, you had two countries, England and Wales. But in this example, we're just going to pick out countries that, just Wales as the country. Now, once I've come in and I've defined all this, I can come in and click execute, and that goes away. That goes away and runs that process. That'll take a minute or so. But basically, the end result is a model which looks something like this. So you probably would have all seen something fairly similar, where you've got essentially one column here, one column here, one column here, and all of the different combinations in that column are sort of mapped out. Now, what we've done differently this time is we've automatically imported a series of rules. So if we look on this task block, click on rules, you'll see that we are essentially explaining out that rule that we spoke about. So we're saying here it's not allowed to be Tesco buyer and Jersey Early supplier. So inside here, we've just set this to name of buyer must not equal Tesco and type of supplier must not equal Jersey Early. So we've done similar thing for all of these other ones. So essentially, we're just passing out these rules into different blocks. And then once we've done all that, you've now got a model or an asset that you can create all that data from. So what we've done here is actually come in and generate 205 valid paths based off of the rules that we've created. So immediately you can kind of see how we've moved from that initial, I don't know how many do we have, that initial 11 combinations to now actually we've created 205 paths. And because we've entered all of those data rules into our model, we know with certainty that all of those rows of data are valid and only includes the correct combinations. Now, at this point, you can come in and add more rules, add more combinations that should or shouldn't exist, and further develop your data model. So that could be done from within the model itself, like you probably have all done before with rules, or you can do another import and create another model. Now, essentially what we can do here is, now we've created those 205 paths, you'll see that there's a sort of data found tag next to each one of these. Just before this session, I just came in, selected our scenario where we're going to make or find data, and I've just hit execute. And basically the end result of that is 205 rows of data, which you can see here, where we've got, series of buyers, series of suppliers, et cetera, and now all of these rows of data are ready to be embedded within, a manual test case, within an automation framework. It doesn't really matter. Once you've got your valid combinations into a list, it's incredibly flexible with where you want to go with it. So that kind of covers off, the process of importing data with a series of rules overlaid on it, and kind of shows how you can move from actually not having very much data to having, a much richer set of data based off of your rules and the requirements that you've got.